And my computer did a big update last week, and it seems to be struggling to recover from that. Running really super slow. All right, so I've got a part. My units are inch, pounds, and seconds. And I'm just going to start a simple sketch on the front plane. And I'm just going to sketch a center point rectangle on the origin. And it's going to be very similar. We saw this last week, so I'm going to make the length 5. Oh, come on. It's killing me. And the height 3. So the sketch is fully defined. I'm going to go ahead and extrude this. No, I'm going to have to probably reboot this thing, see if it gets any better here in a minute. I don't know if I can deal with this. So I'll just make this 0.5 thick. So we just got this nice little rectangle here. Got this nice little block. So we've gotten really, at this point, we should be fairly comfortable with making the equations using the equations tool. What I want us to work with today is it's not equations, but you can use equations in them, but it's called configurations, which means I can make multiple parts with the same part file. That's what we're getting at here, is we can make several parts with the same part file. So the configurations are managed with the configuration manager right here. So right now we're in the feature manager. You know, this is the feature manager, which is what we use most of the time. We're going to switch into the configuration manager. And you can see that the default, every part has a default configuration, which happens automatically on its own. We can right click on the part configurations and we can choose add configurations. So I'm going to name this one. I'm just going to make this one number 2, and the description is going to be 5 by 6. And you can use this stuff in the bill of materials. It's nice. So I'm going to hit the check mark. And now we've got the default, and we have number 2. We could rename this. We could call this one number 1. So now we've got 2 different parts, and you can see which one's active by the green check mark. Okay. Now, right now, they're both the same. We can switch between them, and there are no differences, right? But what I want to do is double the sizes of the number 2. So I want to make it, you know, instead of 5 by 3, I want to make it 10 by 6. So I've got the number 2 active, and I'm going to switch back to the feature manager. And I'm just going to pick on the boss extrude one time just to kind of bring up the dimensions. And then I'm going to double click, and I like to double click on the dimension line instead of the text, because I want this modify dimension tool to come up. Now, I may have to actually get into the sketch to get it to come up. There we go. I actually picked on that. Sometimes if you double click the number, you don't get this modify box. It just opens up a little text window. So you can't do this with the text window. You want to be careful that you have this modify dimension text window. So this little switch right here, we've not looked at it yet, but it tells you what you're about to do. Are you changing this 5 dimension for all the configurations, So in this case, we want to leave the configuration number 1 at 5, and we only want to change the current configuration. So we're going to change the way this is behaving from all configurations to this configuration. And then we're going to change the dimension to 10. So that's very important that you note what's going on with this little switch right here, because you could accidentally change it on all of them. And we only have 2 in this case, but you could have 100. So we're going to hit the check mark. We're going to do the same thing with the 3. We're going to make sure it's this configuration only. We're going to make it 6. And then we're going to do the same thing with the 0.5. This configuration only, and we'll make it 1. So we just doubled all the dimensions. So if we go back to our configuration manager and we go back to number 1, it should be changing sizes. So double click them, and it didn't ever rebuild to make my part number 2 on my case, but when I went back to it, it did. So small, large, and this is all in the same part file. How's everybody coming with this? Is this making sense? Is that working for everybody?
Yes.
Okay. Let's go ahead and add another configuration. And I want to point out, you know, when we talked about the equations, we talked about the common pitfall where you might not get the equation linked to the equation. It just puts the number in. So sometimes there's a little pitfall with these configurations where if you right click on one of the configurations and choose add derived configuration, that configuration comes in, and I don't want you to do this, but I just wanted to show you. This configuration comes in as a child of number 1, which we don't really want. And I really don't understand when you would want that. I can't really explain why you would want that. So I just want to watch out for that, and we don't want to do that. I don't know if I can get rid of it or not. I probably can't with a current. Yeah, no, I can't. So just watch out. We don't want derived configuration. So always start at the top of the part and add a configuration. We'll call this one number 3. And we'll just continue to double. So 20 by 12. So right now it's the same size as number 2. So it's not changing. So we have to configure those dimensions again.
That's weird. You put my number 3, and this be my number 1. I mean, it still came in as a 3rd.
Yeah, you don't have a space in the number 2. So it's kind of listed in alphabetical order, I think. So this time I'm going to pick on this dimension. And this time, instead of double clicking the text, I've just kind of left clicked on the dimension line. So the dimension is highlighted. And if I right click, I can pick this configure dimension, which brings up a different tool that does the same thing. And in my mind, this is the one that I really like because I can see what the dimensions are set for all the configurations at one time. So I'm configuring this dimension, and for number 3, I want to make it 20. Okay, and then I can do the same thing. Configure the dimensions for 12 for the number 3. And then we'll double the thickness, it'll be 2. So I'm having to go back to the extrusion each time. So now we've got 3 different size parts, all in the same part file. So where you see this used a lot are things like fasteners. So if you use a built-in toolbox in Inventor or SolidWorks, they're all using these different configurations where those parameters are pre-designed and you just choose the one you want and it sizes up to the correct size. So fasteners are real common with that. And you may remember in intermediate drafting class where we did the tabled drawings, where we had the drawing that didn't have a real dimension on there. It just had a variable, A, B, C. And then those variables were tied to a table that told, what the length of A, B, and C were for each individual part. This is a perfect means to model those parts that have those different sizes for the same dimensions. So we are able to configure these dimensions to make multiple parts in the same part file. So we've got this one part file that has 3 variations, and if we go to create an assembly, we have to choose which variation we want. If we go to make a drawing, we need to choose which variation we want. So you just have to, you've got more decisions to make as you build these configurations. Does everybody kind of understand what we got here, what we're doing? I kind of like doing this with the parts that are in the test, but sometimes if you get to removing features, especially on these complicated parts where you have to edit the parent-child relationships and stuff like that, like we did last week on those pockets that you were working on, this might not be the best way to go. So I think I would recommend at this point that you save each part individually as you finish it and then start a new part. Save that part with a new different name to continue to modify it to add and remove or change the equations. So for the test, I think you want to stick with the equations, and I think you want to stick with saving individual part files as you go, as opposed to making these configurations. And I think these configurations work great for the parts that you did on the CSWA, but they're a little bit less complicated and don't get quite as messy as the CSWP parts do. So this would have been nice to add to our tools last year, but I think we'll make some configured parts later on, or we'll do some configurations. Part of your final project will have configurations. So this is not something that we're just going to move on and not talk about and carry on. But we're going to kind of stop right there as far as talking about configurations, unless there's some questions. These are all individual parts that, in the same part file. Those are 3 individual parts that are saved or stored in that same part file. So are there any questions? Does everybody kind of understand what we did?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So this week, I want you to carry on and finish the chapter 1 parts that pick up on page 143 and go through 148. And then I also want you to start on the chapter 2 part. So both those lab assignments are listed on the week 3 module. So there's parts there. I've got the parts that you can download to work through those chapter 2 parts. And so, if you don't have your textbook, let me know and I'll try to get something by Wednesday in place for this chapter 2. But I think if you could work on the chapter 1 stuff, which I think I have the scans. Yeah, I think I've got the scans for those, all that. So I think you can carry on with these scans here. Yeah, you can get all the way through, I think, chapter 1 with this scan, with this part. So work through the step-by-steps. And remember, you get all the details on the front end of it here, but it doesn't really give you enough to just start in and get to making it, So you don't really just start right here. You go ahead and you go to the new you go to the steps, create a new folder to save your working, create a new part. You know, it's kind of stepping you out through the process, build the equations. And so follow the steps and really try to do the modeling process the way that they're wanting you to do it, instead of just the way you see it. So you might pick up something new by doing it this way that you don't already know. So follow their steps, follow their sketch methods. It'd be easier for me to help you if you get into a trick if we're following these, if you get stuck somewhere. But just follow these step by steps and then just record the weights where you come to those places in that lab exercise and Canvas. And you know, I don't remember this one having trouble. I'll work through it too, like I did last week, but just keep trying to make forward progress. Don't panic if something doesn't match exactly perfect. Just double check your numbers, and if your numbers match, then you'll be in good shape. And this one should look familiar because this is very similar to some of the parts that you did on that CSWP last fall. So it's kind of going to get you prepared. Those are not parts you're going to model, but just talking about it. All right. So any questions about what I need you to do this week?
I actually don't have my book yet, so
I'm sorry. What was that?
I do not have my book yet.
Okay. So, but they've got one coming for you.
Yes.
Okay. So I will probably get the chapter 2 stuff scanned similar to what we see here for the chapter 1, and that'll buy a little time to keep working, you know, so you can get through the chapter 1 stuff today, and by Wednesday I'll try to have chapter 2 stuff scanned and available to you.
Okay.
So you can pick up there, and maybe they'll have your books in by Wednesday. You know, just keep checking on them.
Probably.
Yeah, but I will not leave you stranded there. I think you got enough to work on today, and then we'll pick up. I'll have chapter 2 stuff scanned in and posted by Wednesday. Any other questions? Okay. I'm going to stop the recording and just kind of stand by and be available to help you if you get stuck on anything. Just share your screen and we'll work through it, okay?